No. In the 80s, he was just a rival.
Just a rival.
It was just competition.
Before they became icons of the same genre, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis were part of a quiet Hollywood rivalry that few truly understood. For years, fans only saw the finished version of their story: the friendship, the collaborations, the public praise. But now, at 78, Schwarzenegger is finally pulling back the curtain on what really happened behind the scenes when Bruce Willis first stepped into the action spotlight. The harsh childhood that forged Schwarzenegger. Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger's story begins in the quiet Austrian village of Thal, where he was born on July 30th, 1947. On the surface, it might sound like the kind of place where a kid could grow up running through fields and enjoying simple country life. But the reality for Arnold was far more intense. Post-war Austria was still weighed down by hardship, and discipline was treated almost like a survival tool. For Arnold, childhood often felt less like growing up and more like training for battle. His parents believed strongly in strict discipline, and punishment was not uncommon. Despite that environment, Arnold remained deeply attached to his mother, who provided warmth and comfort whenever she could. His relationship with his father, Gustav Schwarzenegger, was far more complicated. Gustav served as the town's chief of police and had previously fought in World War II. Like many Austrians during that era, he had served in the German military and had joined the Nazi Party in 1938. He later fought in the Battle of Stalingrad, one of the war's most brutal campaigns, before being discharged in 1943 after contracting malaria. The weight of Gustav's military background and rigid personality shaped the household into one ruled by authority, pressure, and emotional distance. Arnold's struggles at home went beyond strict rules. His father openly favored Arnold's older brother, Meinhard, and made little effort to hide it. Arnold often felt pushed aside, creating an emotional divide that stayed with him throughout his childhood. Gustav was also known to be deeply suspicious and jealous, carrying an unfounded belief that Arnold might not be his biological son. Whether that suspicion came from insecurity or unresolved trauma, it only widened the gap between father and son, leaving Arnold to grow up feeling rejected and constantly trying to prove his worth. Life at home was also shaped by financial hardship. The Schwarzenegger family was far from wealthy, and they often struggled to get by. Arnold would later recall how one of the most exciting days of his childhood was when the family finally managed to buy a refrigerator. Moments like that showed just how limited their resources were. Between the strict discipline, emotional tension, and money problems, Arnold began searching for something that could give him control over his own future. Sports became that escape. Encouraged by his father, who had been an athlete himself, Arnold first poured his energy into soccer. For a while, it seemed like his path might follow that direction, but everything changed when he was 13 years old. His soccer coach introduced the team to weight training at a local gym, and Arnold instantly found something that captured his full attention. Within a year, soccer faded into the background as bodybuilding became his new obsession. By the age of 14, Arnold had already decided he wanted to become the greatest bodybuilder in the world. It was an ambitious goal for a teenager from a struggling Austrian family, but his dedication quickly became legendary. He trained every day, pushing himself beyond normal limits. His commitment was so intense that he would break into the gym on weekends when it was closed, refusing to miss a workout. For Arnold, lifting weights was no longer just exercise. It was a pathway to freedom and identity. His relentless training began to pay off, but his determination also led him into risky decisions. At 18, Arnold faced serious consequences when he left his required Austrian military training without permission. He did it to compete in the Mr. Europe bodybuilding competition in Germany, risking punishment and even possible jail time. To Arnold, the opportunity to chase his dream outweighed any potential consequences. As he continued winning local powerlifting and bodybuilding competitions, Arnold's ambitions only grew stronger. His ultimate goal was to win the prestigious Mr. Universe title, widely seen as the peak of bodybuilding success at the time. He began climbing the competitive ladder, first capturing the Junior Mr. Europe title, which helped establish him as a rising star. Then, in 1966, at just 19 years old, Arnold boarded an airplane for the first time in his life. His destination was London, where he would compete in his first Mr. Universe contest. The competition proved to be a harsh lesson. Arnold lost to American bodybuilder Chester Yorton, who had more experience and maturity. The defeat was painful, but the trip turned out to be life-changing in ways he never expected. One of the contest judges, Wag Bennett, recognized Arnold's potential and offered to coach him. Knowing Arnold had little money, Bennett allowed him to stay in his crowded family home above his gym. It was far from luxurious, and Arnold barely spoke English at the time, but he embraced the opportunity without hesitation. Living in England exposed Arnold to better training, new experiences, and most importantly, his idol, legendary bodybuilder Reg Park. Park became both a mentor and a lifelong influence, helping Arnold sharpen his focus and refine his techniques. The combination of expert coaching, relentless discipline, and his growing confidence quickly pushed Arnold to the next level. In 1967, just 1 year after his disappointing loss, Arnold achieved what once seemed impossible. At 20 years old, he became the youngest Mr. Universe champion in history. The victory confirmed that his relentless drive and willingness to sacrifice everything for his dream had paid off. Standing at the top of the bodybuilding world, Arnold felt unstoppable. But as his fame grew and his confidence soared, he was about to encounter a challenge he had never fully mastered before: navigating relationships and the attention that came with his rising stardom. The tragedy he couldn't escape. Arnold Schwarzenegger entered his first serious relationship in 1969 when he met Barbara Baker, an English teacher who quickly became an important figure in his life. At the beginning, Arnold seemed almost too good to be true. He was adventurous, confident, and overflowing with energy. Fresh off his Mr. Universe success, he carried himself with the kind of charisma that naturally drew people in. To Barbara, he looked like a man destined for greatness. But as their relationship continued, she began to notice a different side of him, one shaped by deep emotional walls and an intense focus on ambition that often left little room for vulnerability. Not long after they began dating, Arnold faced one of the most painful moments of his life. In 1971, his older brother, Meinhard, died in a tragic car accident after driving while intoxicated. The sudden loss shook Arnold deeply. Although he and Meinhard had never shared an especially close bond, largely because of the tension and favoritism created by their father, the tragedy still carried enormous emotional weight. The loss forced Arnold to confront feelings he rarely allowed himself to process. When Meinhard died in Austria, Arnold made the difficult decision not to return home for the funeral. His strained relationship with his father played a major role in that choice, leaving him to mourn from a distance. In the years that followed, Arnold rarely spoke publicly about his brother and generally avoided discussing the subject altogether. His silence suggested unresolved grief, mixed with the complicated emotions tied to his family history. Despite missing the funeral, Arnold found another way to honor his brother's memory. Meinhard had been engaged to a woman named Erika Knapp, and together they had a young son named Patrick. After Meinhard's death, Patrick was left without a father. Arnold stepped in quietly but decisively. He helped pay for Patrick's education and later supported his move to the United States, where Patrick eventually built a successful career as an attorney. It was a gesture that revealed Arnold's sense of responsibility toward family, even when personal relationships were fractured. The tragedy of losing his brother marked a painful beginning to the decade, but an even more complicated chapter soon followed. In 1972, just 1 year after Meinhard's death, Arnold's father, Gustav, suffered a stroke and died at the age of 65. Once again, Arnold did not attend the funeral. Over time, he offered different explanations for his absence, leaving the true reason uncertain. What remained clear, however, was the emotional distance that had defined their relationship for most of Arnold's life. Barbara Baker later described Arnold's reaction to his father's death as surprisingly detached. She recalled that he delivered the news without visible emotion, showing little outward response to the passing of the man who had shaped so much of his childhood. According to her, Arnold also avoided discussing his brother during this period, reinforcing the impression that he was determined to leave his troubled family past behind and focus entirely on his future. Yet the shadow of his father never fully disappeared. As Arnold's fame grew, he became increasingly concerned about his father's military past. He knew Gustav had served during World War II, but the details remained unclear. The possibility that his father may have been connected to wartime atrocities lingered in Arnold's mind for years. Eventually, he decided he needed answers. Arnold took the unusual step of asking the Simon Wiesenthal Center, an organization dedicated to investigating Nazi war crimes, to examine his father's wartime records. The investigation carefully reviewed Gustav Schwarzenegger's service history to determine whether he had been involved in any documented atrocities. When the findings were finally delivered, Arnold felt a sense of relief. The investigation concluded that although Gustav had been a member of the Nazi Party and served in the German military, there was no evidence linking him directly to war crimes. The result helped ease Arnold's fears, though it could not erase the painful memories of his father's harsh discipline. Arnold later spoke openly about the severity of his upbringing, describing a childhood filled with physical punishment and strict control. He explained that such discipline was common in his community at the time, but he believed he often received harsher treatment because of his refusal to conform. His dreams of leaving Austria, becoming successful, and building a larger life for himself frequently placed him in direct conflict with his father's expectations. Instead of allowing that environment to break his spirit, Arnold used it as motivation. He became determined to escape his circumstances and prove that his ambitions were not unrealistic fantasies. That determination followed him into his career, especially as he transitioned from bodybuilding into acting. The road to Hollywood success was far from immediate, requiring nearly a decade of persistence before he finally achieved mainstream recognition. By the early 1980s, audiences were ready for a new kind of action star, and Arnold fit that role perfectly. His breakthrough came with Conan the Barbarian in 1982, a film that showcased his physical presence and launched him into global popularity. The success continued with Conan the Destroyer, further cementing his place in action cinema. His career reached another level when he was cast as the relentless cyborg assassin in James Cameron's science fiction film, The Terminator. Arnold later claimed that O.J. Simpson had originally been considered for the role, though Cameron has maintained that Simpson was only briefly discussed by producers and never seriously cast. Arnold also revealed that he was initially considered for the heroic role of Kyle Reese. But during his meeting with Cameron, his enthusiasm for the Terminator character impressed the director enough to shift casting decisions. The production of The Terminator included its own creative clashes. Arnold famously questioned the wording of the line that would later become legendary. He preferred a more formal version, believing it sounded more mechanical and robotic. Cameron insisted on keeping the original phrasing, and Arnold ultimately delivered the line multiple times during filming, unaware it would become one of the most recognized quotes in film history. As Arnold's movie career exploded, he quickly became one of the defining action stars of the decade. His rise placed him in direct competition with Sylvester Stallone, another dominant figure in the action genre. The rivalry between the two became one of Hollywood's most talked-about storylines. Both actors constantly tried to outdo one another with bigger stunts, larger weapons, and increasingly explosive films. The competition pushed the genre into more exaggerated and spectacular territory, and audiences eagerly followed the back-and-forth battle. At one point, Arnold even used the rivalry to his advantage. When Stallone asked about a script for the film Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, Arnold pretended he was interested in the project, knowing Stallone's competitive nature might influence his decision. Stallone accepted the role, and the film later became widely criticized. Stallone eventually admitted the movie was one of the biggest regrets of his career, while Arnold openly acknowledged the strategic move as part of their ongoing rivalry. The tension between the two stars fueled media attention and helped define action films throughout the decade. Each new release felt like another round in their personal competition, with both actors pushing themselves and the genre to new extremes. While the rivalry played out publicly, Arnold's personal life was evolving just as rapidly. As his fame reached new heights following The Terminator, he entered a new chapter that would shape both his career and his future, eventually leading him toward marriage with Maria Shriver. How Arnold shocked the political world. Arnold Schwarzenegger built his entire life around one simple idea: aim higher than anyone expects and refuse to back down. By the early 2000s, he had already conquered bodybuilding and Hollywood, but he was quietly preparing for another challenge that would surprise almost everyone watching. In 2003, during an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Arnold made a stunning announcement. He revealed that he was running for governor of California, instantly turning a late-night interview into a historic political moment. The timing of his decision was tied to an unusual political crisis. California voters had launched a recall effort against Democratic Governor Gray Davis, creating the state's first gubernatorial recall election in more than 80 years. The special election quickly turned into a crowded and chaotic race, with 135 candidates placing their names on the ballot. The list included seasoned politicians, business figures, and even celebrities, showing just how unpredictable the election had become. When Arnold entered the race, reactions ranged from curiosity to outright mockery. Many critics treated his campaign as a publicity stunt, questioning whether a movie star known for action films and a thick Austrian accent could seriously run one of the largest economies in the world. But Arnold had built a reputation for achieving goals that initially sounded unrealistic, and he approached politics with the same confidence that fueled his previous successes. His campaign strategy broke many traditional political rules. He had never held public office, and his experience in government was limited. He participated in only one major debate during the campaign, relying instead on his global fame, charisma, and ability to connect with large audiences. His celebrity status brought constant media attention, allowing him to dominate public conversation throughout the election season. When the recall election concluded, Governor Gray Davis was officially removed from office. Arnold Schwarzenegger won the race with 48.6% of the vote, finishing more than 1 million votes ahead of his closest competitor. The victory marked another dramatic chapter in his life, transforming him from the Terminator into what many people began calling the Governator. His political triumph, however, was immediately followed by intense scrutiny. Running for public office opened Arnold's past to examination in ways he had never experienced before. Political opponents and investigative reporters began searching for controversies and personal scandals that could damage his campaign. Allegations of inappropriate behavior quickly surfaced, but the situation escalated just 5 days before the election when a major newspaper published a report detailing accusations from several women. The claims described incidents involving inappropriate comments and physical misconduct. Arnold responded by acknowledging that he had behaved poorly at times and issued an apology while also disputing portions of the accusations. Despite the seriousness of the allegations, the controversy had little impact on the election's outcome. Voters ultimately focused more on his public image, his promises for reform, and his reputation as a strong, decisive leader. Other controversies from his past also resurfaced during the campaign. Critics highlighted scenes from the documentary Pumping Iron that showed Arnold using marijuana, along with interviews from the 1970s in which he openly discussed past drug use. At the time, such admissions could still create significant political damage. However, Arnold's public persona and widespread popularity helped him weather the criticism without losing significant support. Not long after taking office, Arnold experienced an event that strengthened his public image in a completely unexpected way. In 2004, while vacationing in Hawaii, he found himself in the middle of a real-life rescue. While relaxing on the beach, he noticed a swimmer struggling several hundred yards offshore. Recognizing the danger immediately, Arnold grabbed a boogie board and paddled toward the man, who was suffering from severe muscle cramps and was unable to swim back to shore. Arnold helped guide the swimmer safely to land and stayed with him while he recovered from exhaustion and shock. Witnesses later described the moment as both dramatic and surreal, watching one of the world's most famous action heroes perform a genuine rescue in real life. The story quickly spread through media outlets, adding to Arnold's reputation as someone willing to step in when people needed help. As governor, Arnold quickly proved that he would not fit easily into traditional political categories. Although he identified as a Republican, his policies often reflected moderate and socially liberal views. He supported abortion rights, expressed support for same-sex marriage, and even officiated a same-sex wedding during his time in office. His political style blended fiscal conservatism with social positions that appealed to a broader range of voters. Many observers initially assumed Arnold's governorship would be short-lived, believing his political career was built more on celebrity than leadership ability. He surprised critics by winning re-election in 2006 with nearly 60% of the vote, a remarkable achievement for a Republican candidate in a state that had strongly supported Democratic presidential candidates for over a decade. His popularity drew comparisons to Ronald Reagan, another former actor who had successfully transitioned into political leadership. Arnold also gained attention for declining his gubernatorial salary, which was approximately $175,000 per year. Having earned tens of millions of dollars during his acting career, he explained that he did not need the income and preferred to save taxpayer money. Combined with his public acts of heroism and moderate political positions, decisions like this helped maintain his popularity with many voters. Despite those achievements, Arnold's time in office ended with one of the most controversial decisions of his career. Just hours before leaving the governor's office, he commuted the prison sentence of Esteban Núñez, who had been convicted of involuntary manslaughter and originally sentenced to 16 years in prison. Arnold reduced the sentence to 7 years, sparking immediate public outrage. The controversy intensified when it became widely known that Esteban Núñez was the son of Fabian Núñez, a powerful political figure who had served as Speaker of the California Assembly and maintained a close political alliance with Arnold. Critics viewed the decision as an act of favoritism, arguing that personal relationships had influenced a serious legal judgment. The family of the victim, Luis Santos, was especially devastated by the decision. They learned about the commutation through a reporter rather than through official communication, which deepened their anger and sense of injustice. The family quickly filed a lawsuit in an attempt to block the commutation, arguing that the decision represented an abuse of political power. Although the judge reviewing the case used strong language to criticize the decision, describing it as deeply troubling, he ultimately ruled that the governor had full legal authority to grant the commutation. With no legal options remaining, the Santos family was forced to accept the outcome. Esteban Núñez was eventually released from prison several years later. The commutation became one of the most damaging controversies of Arnold's political career, casting a shadow over his time as governor. Yet, even as he left office facing criticism and public debate, another personal scandal was already approaching, one that would challenge both his public image and his private life in ways he could never have anticipated. Arnold Schwarzenegger's darkest secret. For more than a decade, Arnold Schwarzenegger carried a secret that would eventually shake both his personal life and his public image. In 2011, that secret finally surfaced, setting off one of the most shocking scandals of his life. The first sign of trouble came when Arnold and his wife, Maria Shriver, announced the end of their 25-year marriage. Maria moved out of their Brentwood home, and the public immediately began speculating about what could have caused such a sudden and dramatic separation. The full story emerged just days later, when reports revealed that Arnold had fathered a child years earlier with the family's longtime housekeeper, Mildred "Patty" Baena. The revelation stunned the public and deeply devastated Maria Shriver. Arnold had worked for years to keep the affair hidden, but as Baena's son, Joseph, grew older, his striking resemblance to Arnold made the truth increasingly difficult to conceal. Maria's suspicions slowly built until she eventually confronted Baena, who confirmed the secret that had been hidden for years. Arnold later stated that he revealed the truth to Maria after leaving the governor's office, but the timeline showed that he confessed only after Maria had already discovered the truth through her own confrontation with Baena. The betrayal shattered their marriage, and the details surrounding the affair made the situation even more painful. During the time Baena was pregnant with Arnold's child, she was still working inside Arnold and Maria's household. At the very same time, Maria herself was pregnant with the couple's fourth child. The two women were experiencing pregnancy simultaneously, though only one knew the full truth behind the situation. Joseph Baena was born on October 2, 1997, just days after Maria gave birth to her son Christopher. For several years, Joseph's biological parentage remained hidden, and even Arnold was initially unaware of the truth. As Joseph grew older, however, the physical similarities between father and son became impossible to ignore. When Joseph was around 7 or 8 years old, Arnold began to recognize the reality of the situation. Despite knowing, he managed to keep the secret hidden from the public until it finally surfaced in 2011, instantly dismantling the carefully maintained image of his family life. The scandal also triggered renewed attention toward other past relationships. Actress Brigitte Nielsen, who had worked alongside Arnold in the film Red Sonja, revealed that she had an affair with him during the movie's production. At the time, Arnold was already in a relationship with Maria Shriver. Nielsen later described the relationship as intense but temporary, acknowledging that both of them understood it would end once filming wrapped. Arnold himself later confirmed the affair in his autobiography, openly acknowledging the relationship as part of his complicated personal history. Nielsen eventually expressed guilt over the affair, particularly because Arnold was already committed to Maria at the time. The revelation reinforced a pattern that had appeared throughout Arnold's relationships, including earlier ones, such as his relationship with Barbara Baker. His personal history showed repeated struggles with infidelity, even while maintaining a public image of success and stability. Following the exposure of the scandal, Arnold's reputation suffered significant damage. Over time, however, he addressed his actions with unusual openness. In interviews, he admitted that he had often relied on denial when confronted about his behavior, acknowledging that while it allowed him to avoid consequences in the short term, it caused lasting harm to those closest to him. Arnold's personal relationships had long been shaped by his strong sense of independence and intense focus on his own goals. Former partners, including Barbara Baker, had described his personality as deeply self-driven, often placing his ambitions above emotional considerations. Maria Shriver experienced this dynamic repeatedly throughout their marriage, not only through the affairs, but also through major life decisions Arnold made without fully involving her. One example occurred in 1997, when Arnold faced a serious health crisis that required open-heart surgery. Rather than immediately sharing the situation with Maria, he initially attempted to keep the procedure private. Years later, he made another major decision without her involvement when he chose to run for governor of California. He informed Maria only days before publicly announcing his candidacy, leaving her shocked and emotionally overwhelmed by the sudden life change and the intense public scrutiny that followed. Arnold Schwarzenegger's life story reflects an extraordinary combination of remarkable achievements and deeply complicated personal choices. His relentless determination helped him rise from a small Austrian town to global fame in multiple industries. Yet that same drive often came at the expense of his closest relationships. His legacy remains complex, shaped equally by groundbreaking accomplishments and deeply personal controversies, making him one of the most fascinating and contradictory public figures of modern times. At 78, Arnold Schwarzenegger finally tells the truth about Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis didn't begin his rise to fame by running barefoot through explosions or trading punches with terrorists. His path into Hollywood looked very different at first. He built his reputation on television, most notably with the hit series Moonlighting in the mid-1980s, where audiences got used to seeing him balance drama with sharp comedic timing. Because of that background, many people inside the industry were caught off guard when his name started circulating for the lead role in a high-stakes action thriller called Die Hard. Director John McTiernan and the studio initially imagined a very different type of hero. At the time, action movies were dominated by larger-than-life figures known for massive physiques and unstoppable strength. The role of John McClane was first offered to Frank Sinatra due to a contractual obligation connected to an earlier film, but Sinatra declined. After that, the studio turned to some of the biggest action stars in Hollywood, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Burt Reynolds, and Harrison Ford. One by one, they all passed on the project for various reasons. Only after the list of established stars had been exhausted did the studio seriously consider Bruce Willis. It was a gamble. Willis was known, but not as an action star. Some critics and actors openly doubted whether he could carry a movie filled with intense stunts and gunfire. According to accounts later shared in The Last Action Heroes, The Triumphs, Flops, and Feuds of Hollywood's Kings of Carnage, by Nick DeSemlian, one of the actors who had turned down the film even mocked the idea that Willis could succeed in the genre. Arnold Schwarzenegger was among the actors approached for the role. At the time, he had already built a reputation as one of the most dominant action stars in the world. However, he was interested in expanding his range and decided to pursue comedy instead, choosing to star in Twins. That decision cleared the path for Willis to step into the role that would ultimately redefine action films. Die Hard, released in 1988, placed Willis in the role of John McClane, a New York City police officer visiting Los Angeles to reconnect with his estranged wife during her company's Christmas party at Nakatomi Plaza. The celebration quickly turns into chaos when a group of terrorists, led by the sophisticated and ruthless Hans Gruber, takes the building hostage. McClane becomes the only person capable of stopping them, forcing him into a brutal, isolated fight for survival. Behind the scenes, stories circulated about the skepticism Willis faced. One widely shared anecdote describes a moment shortly after Die Hard premiered. At a dinner gathering in Santa Monica, Schwarzenegger reportedly spotted Willis across the room and jokingly questioned whether he had the physical build to become a convincing action hero, even gesturing toward his own muscular arms to make the point. Whether playful or competitive, the remark reflected how strongly the industry associated action stardom with physical size at the time. History would quickly prove those doubts wrong. Die Hard became a massive success and transformed Bruce Willis into a global action icon. More importantly, his performance reshaped what audiences expected from action heroes. Instead of an unstoppable warrior, Willis portrayed McClane as vulnerable, exhausted, injured, and often scared, making him feel more relatable and human. That shift influenced countless action films that followed. Despite early competition, Willis and Schwarzenegger eventually developed mutual respect and friendship. Over the years, they worked together, including appearances in the Expendables franchise. Schwarzenegger later spoke highly of Willis, describing him as one of Hollywood's most significant stars and praising both his talent and character. Decades after redefining the action genre, Willis faced a deeply personal challenge. In March 2022, his family announced that he had been diagnosed with aphasia, a condition that affects communication abilities. The diagnosis forced him to step away from acting at the age of 67. Nearly a year later, in February 2023, his family shared an updated diagnosis revealing that he was living with frontotemporal dementia, also known as FTD. Following the announcement, Schwarzenegger publicly expressed admiration and support for his longtime friend, highlighting Willis's lasting legacy in Hollywood and remembering him as both an extraordinary performer and a genuinely kind person. Although Bruce Willis stepped away from the spotlight to focus on his health and family, his impact on film remains undeniable. His portrayal of John McClane didn't just create a legendary character, it changed the entire direction of action storytelling. His career stands as proof that a hero does not have to be invincible to be unforgettable.